Alright, we're going to talk about analyzing a quadratic function in a graph. So what I want you to do is I want you to open up a new document, hit no, and I want you to open up a graph. Now, let's type in a quadratic function. Let's say we have, well, make it simple because it works for all of them. X squared plus 7x plus 12. Oh, and I didn't put the plus, I put multiplying. It happens sometimes, you can just go back and fix it. And here is x squared plus 7x plus 12. Now, you have your graph, and what we can do is we can move this around a little bit. We can open that up. You can change the window. We can make it so it looks a little bit better for us. There we go. Looks good. You can pull and drag and do whatever you want to. You can go in the menu. Now the biggest thing about parabolas is that we want to be able to find our vertex, which is the point where the parabola, essentially, I call it the seed of the parabola. The parabola grows to the left and to the right of the vertex. And we want to be able to find our x-intercepts, the zeros, right down here. Pretty easy in a calculator. If you go into menu, and we have all these different menu items, and some of them are different. You might have a calculator that says geometry, and they put basically all of these 7, 8, 9, A and B into one menu. But if we go into analyze graph, that's where we really want to analyze stuff. And the first thing it has up there is 0. So that's going to find you a 0. And the 0 is where the function crosses the x-axis. If you don't know what you're doing, but you know you got to find a 0, you can always move your cursor up to the box. It says click the function graph, then click the left and right search bounds. Or you can enter an x value. If you know an x value that's smaller than the 0 and an x value that's bigger than the 0, you can enter those. I like to use this dotted line with this finger. You can move it left and right, and it asks for a lower bound. You can only look for one 0 at a time, and I'm going to look for that 0 right there. So lower bound, I always think lower means left, so I'm going to go to the left of that guy. And upper bound means that I want to create an area where the calculator, this little sliver, is where we're going to actually look. And over here there are no zeros because it doesn't hit the x-axis anymore. As soon as it does, you can see that 0 popped right up, and that number that's kind of in gray is -4. That tells me I found a 0. If you hit OK, you can hit enter, or you can hit the middle button at the top. You hit OK for -0, and we can move this right over here, is the first 0. But there's another 0 over here. So we need to do the same thing all over again. The box disappeared. This is kind of a one and done type of operation. It found a 0, it's done. Other operations, other functions stay up there. But we have to go back into analyze graph, go back to 0, and now we got to focus on that guy right there. So we need to go to the left of that one and move to the right, create that column where the calculator is going to look, and as soon as it says 0, we know we got it. So once we know we have a 0, click OK. The box went away. There's our point, -3, 0. So this might help you factor too, because the points here, -4 and -3, are part of when we actually if we factor this, we could have got x, the factor x plus 3 times x plus 4. But now, since I got my two zeros, good to go with that, I want to find my vertex. Now the vertex is going to correspond to either a minimum point or a maximum point. Since the parabola is opening up and the vertex is right here, the vertex is actually going to be a minimum point because it's the lowest point. So let's go to menu again, go to analyze graph again, and now see we have minimums and maximums. The minimum is going to be the smallest value. So again, we want a lower bound. So I like to go right around where the first 0 is, because the vertex is, honestly, it's smack dab right in the middle of the two zeros. So I choose one of them, and now you see we're getting different values. What the calculator is actually doing is it's finding the minimum value, the minimum y value of the interval that you pick. And so since we have one over here, and as we keep going and going and going, we're going to get minimum values for the whole time. And then eventually it's going to stop. And we have our minimum, the most minimum value. And there it is. So this negative 3.5 and then negative 0.25 ends up being the vertex that we have here. Now, other things that we could do, we could look at a table of values if we wanted to. The easiest way to pull up a table of values from using the graph is to jump over to the keyboard and hit, this is using some math logic, a table starts with T, so if we hit Control T, we have a table of values, where the table of values, the first column here are your x values. So we can go up, we can go to negative 15, whatever you need. We can move down, we can get to 15, 20, whatever. But if you want to, when you look and you see that when your y values are 0, if you're lucky enough to have those in your table of values, your x values here are the zeros, because a 0 is where the actual function is equal to 0, which means the y value is equal to 0. So I found the negative 4 and the negative 3, which we found on the graph anyway. So if you needed to fill in a table of values, well, just dump the function into the graph, hit Control T, and there it is. There they are. There's all of them. And you can kind of see the values, the y values. We go 2, 6, 12, 20 as we're moving to the left. As we're moving to the right, 2, 6, 12, 20. The idea of symmetry with a parabola like this. We see it happen. 2, 6, 12, 20, 30, 42. 2, 6, 12, 20, 30, 42, and so on and so on. So you'll see the same thing happen on one side that's happening to the other side. And that's because there's that line of symmetry that goes right through the vertex, that point right there. And if you don't want the table of values anymore, you took what you need from there, just hit Control T again. We'll make sure you're in the table of values. Hit Control T, or guess that's not working. Let's jump over here. Click on the graph, hit Control T. Oh, there it goes. You got to be in the graph in order to get rid of the table. So you got to be in the graph to get the table. You got to be in the graph to get rid of the table. But there's our graph. And if we wanted to zoom out, you could zoom out, get your center, put your center right there, put your center right there, maybe put the center right there. And we can zoom in if we wanted to. We go to Window, zoom in. There's your center. 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 So we could get a nicer look at the different values. So that's how you analyze a graph. Analyzing the graph means, well, at first, for right now, just finding those really special points. Zeros, vertices, even a y-intercept if we needed to.